Hello everyone, my dear CMA inter students. Today we are going to revise the chapter of Factories Act 1948. This is going to be a comprehensive, detailed revision, yet in a concise and time-bound manner. So let's begin, right? And of course, this particular revision is in 100% English. So basically, what do you mean by Factories Act? What is it concerned of? It is regarding, or you can simply call it a social legislation, right, which regulates certain working conditions in factories. Social legislation, so definitely for the betterment of society. There are a lot of workers who turn up and come and work in the factories, but are they being provided the basic necessities that they need? Is their health being taken care of? Right, do they have safety measures? Because there are many accidents which actually happen in this factory, because there are machines, right? There might not be proper fences around the machinery, right? So in order to take care of all of that, and keeping in mind that there are a lot of young persons also who are employed in the factories which need extra or special care, because they are not somebody who is adult and can take care of its own, right? So keeping in mind all of this particular Factories Act came into picture to actually provide us health, safety and welfare measures, right? So we have to, in our syllabus, basically read these three. What are the health measures? What are the safety measures? What are the welfare measures? Apart from that, we have a lot more to deal with, right? But they're small topics. Basically, this is what we are dealing with. Apart from that, we have young persons, we have women employment, right? We have their wages, their leave, right? So all of that. Now, this particular act is applicable to throughout India, right? That means no matter in which part of the nation you open a factory, what is factory, we are going to read what is factory in terms of the act, right? So but if at all you're opening a factory, then this particular act is going to be applicable on it, and you have to abide by all the rules, all the laws which are contained in this act, right? So it extends to whole of India. It came into effect on 1st April 1949. It ensures health, safety and welfare of workers, and is also applicable to factories of central government or state government. So it is not like that it is not going to be applicable to any government entity, because usually we have a lot of laws which are applicable to public in general, but it does not apply to anything which government is doing. So here it is not the case. The factories which belong to central or state governments, it is applicable equally to them also, right? We have certain important definitions which actually I'll be dealing with you at the end, because this is of course a revision class and you have some idea of the definition, so we'll be dealing it at the end. But before we actually begin and start the core provisions, there are three definitions which I want you to know. Three, or basically I would say four definitions which I want you to know. What are the category of people that we read in this particular chapter? One is adult. Who is an adult? Who has completed his 18th year of age. Who has completed his 18th year of age. That person is an adult. Then the second category of person is a young person. Who is a young person? Young person could be an adolescent, could be a child. Okay. So adult or young person. Young person is further classified into two. It could be a child, it could be an adolescent. What is a child? Child is usually, we have a preconceived idea that child is somebody who is under the age of 14 years. No, my dear. Child is somebody who has not completed his 15th year of age. That means he could be 14 years also, he is a child. He could be 13, he could be likewise, right? So he is a child. Now when we come to adolescent, adolescent is somebody who has completed his 15th year of age but has not completed his 18th year, right? So in between child and adult, there is an adolescent, and both adolescent and child are called as young persons. Fine. So I hope this is clear. Before we actually proceed, we needed to know this. Okay. So occupier, factory, yeah. One definition that I'll be telling you before is factory. What is, because this is what you're actually reading. So what is a factories? Under Factories Act, what is being called as a factory? Now factory is any premises including precincts. See, when I'm talking about premises, or when I'm talking about precincts, premises is basically that building, right? It could be a building, it could be an open land, and precinct is something which is like you enter, there is an enclosed space like that, right, which is enclosed by the walls, so that is precincts, right? So any premises including precincts, there may be precincts in the factory, there may not be precincts, right? So that is going to be treated as factory if there are 10 or more workers who work in that particular factory. Oh, we'll talk one by one, right? So 10 or more workers. Now, this 10 or more workers, we're talking with the aid of power. With the aid of power means what? See, we have two types of processes, with the aid of power or without the aid of power, right? Without the aid of power, that means you don't need any electricity for your machines, like we do something manually, right? So that is something which is without the aid of power. That doesn't mean that you don't have a ceiling fan over there, no, but you're not using power in the manufacturing process. That is what is intended, right? So without the aid of power, you need to have 20 or more workers who are employed. With the aid of powers, you need to have 10 or more workers who are employed. Now, we don't check at a particular date, okay, that at 31st March 2024 we are going to check whether we have 20% employed or 10% employed. If this was the case, every factory owner, what they'll do is, we don't want Factories Act to be applicable to us, so we don't want this to be considered as a factory. So what we'll do is, we'll employ a lot of people, but just before the year ends, we will retrench them. We'll say they are not on our payroll. So this does not matter if they have worked on any day of the previous 12 months. So if during entire year, that is 365 days, if on any day there were 10 or more workers with the aid of power or 20 or more workers without the aid of power, then that is going to be called as a factory, right? But then they should be in any part of which manufacturing is carried out. The question is, what do we mean by manufacturing? See, manufacturing could be making or altering of something, or you're packing, or you're washing, you're cleaning, you are demolishing, right? You are finishing, you're oiling, you're pumping oil, water, sewage, right? Whatever it is, you're generating power, you are doing printing, you are constructing, right? Or you're preserving something in the cold storage. So that is also included in the definition of manufacturing. So the definition of manufacturing process is actually, I would say, exhaustive. See here, I think we'll have the, yes, here it is. See. So manufacturing process includes all of this. Ma'am, do we need to learn the definition of manufacturing process? It's not very commonly asked, but of course, when it is included in your syllabus, you should be knowing everything, right? Now, let's say I am talking about, there is a, let's say there is a factory or a place where somebody is stitching old bags. Right. So you have a lot of bags which are being stitched properly, decorated, and then being sold. Is it going to be considered as a factory? The answer is yes, ma'am. Why not? Yes, it will be considered as a factory. Okay. Or it will be considered rather as a manufacturing process. And because there may be 10 or more workers with the aid of power, then that is going to be considered as a factory. Right? But let's say I have opened an institute wherein the students come and I am imparting them education. So maybe a lot of people put in their advertisements that we are producing CMA. So are you actually, is it the manufacturing process which is being carried out? The answer is no. Right? So you have to understand what is manufacturing process which is being carried out, and according to that, this is the definition of factory, right? Other definitions we are going to deal with later. Okay, so we will actually begin with the main content. Now, notice by occupier. What is occupier? That you basically know somebody who has the ultimate control of the factory. In detail, we are going to learn it later, right? Now, whenever you are setting up a factory, whenever you are starting a factory, how will somebody get to know that, okay, this is the factory that you have opened? Because there are many illegal factories also which are being run in the nation, right? So there are a lot of people who actually open a factory, some manufacturing process is going on, but they haven't reported their factory, right? So if the inspector actually comes and inspects that area and finds that, okay, this is a factory and you're not complying with the factory laws, then they'll seize your factory, they'll put in penalties, and adequate punishment will be given. So whenever you are actually opening a factory, occupying a factory, right, you know what is the definition of factory. So whenever you're doing that, 15 days before occupying a factory, you actually have to send a written notice. Okay, written notice which will contain the name, address of factory, occupier, and what is the manufacturing process that you're carrying, right? This you are supposed to send it to the chief inspector, right? And also, whenever there is a change in the manager, then whenever you appoint new manager, you have to send the notice of appointing new manager also to the chief inspector, right? So this is a very short section which you have to read, but this is being asked when we are talking about multiple choice questions. Okay, so it is not very frequently asked because it's a section 7, very small section. Then we also have section 7A, which actually talks about the duties of occupier. So occupier duty is very simple, and it's not something which we read and elaborate. It is simply that it is the duty of occupier to actually ensure that the health, safety, and welfare of all workers is intact. So whenever they are coming to work, the safety has to be ensured by the occupier. It is the duty of the occupier to ensure that all the workers are safe in the factory. Their health is not compromised. They have been given adequate welfare measures, at least the basic ones which are prescribed in the factory. So Factories Act actually tells us this is the minimum that you must provide. The factories should actually provide more than that, right? Okay. Then we have section 8, which talks about appointment of inspector, and we have section 9, which actually prescribes the powers of inspector. Powers of inspector is one such question which is often asked in examination. Now, what is appointment? State government can appoint persons with the prescribed qualifications to become the inspectors. Okay, and they may also assign them the limits. Okay, see, practically, if I tell you, we have chief inspectors, we have a lot of authorities, and practically the DM of the area is involved over here. Okay, so let's say whatever is the prescribed qualification, because we don't have to get into that detail, whatever is the prescribed qualification, accordingly, state government will appoint them as the inspectors, that you are the inspectors and this is the jurisdiction limit which has been given to you. This is the local limit within which you have to ensure, you have to get to know that what are the factories, how many factories are there, are they following the laws or not, right? If not, go inspect them, right? And thereafter report, impose penalty and like things. What are the powers of inspector? They can enter into any place. Like if you go to areas like there are many industrial areas in Delhi, if you ask me, and I have seen it personally that even in residential areas there, I cannot recall exactly the name of that particular area, but in that area it is a residential area, but almost under every house what they're doing is the ground floor or the first floor, there's some manufacturing processes going on wherein even if it is without the aid of power, let's say without the aid of power, there are 25-30 people who are working. So that is a factory, right? That is a factory, but it has not been reported anywhere that I have opened a factory or they're not following any laws. So now if I am the inspector and I suspect that particular place to be used as a factory, I have the power under section 9 to enter into that place. I can examine the premises, that what are you using, which machinery are you using, which substance are you using, because even if you have reported it to be a factory, you may be using some hazardous substance, but you're not taking adequate care for that, right? So if there is any accident which which has happened, the inspector has the power to inquire into that accident, right? Procure any document as they need to, right? They can seize any register. There are a lot of registers which are mandatory that you have to maintain. There might be some registers which they maintain just like that, right? So inspector has the power to seize it. They can also take any substance or article, like supposedly you are emitting out some hazardous substances, right? Or there is some disposal of waste, right? You consider it to be no, it is completely harmless for the health. So I can take a sample and get it tested, right? What could be the probable health hazard, right? And I can exercise, if I am the inspector, of course, I can exercise as whatever powers as prescribed. Okay. So this is in general. Now we come to the next type of authority that we read under this act, which is actually certified surgeons. Again, state government can appoint certain medical practitioners to be the certifying surgeons under the Factories Act within a particular local limit, right? Now they are what? They are medical practitioners. So what do they actually do? They have different duties. Number first, they examine and certify young persons. First thing you have to understand that child is actually prohibited to work in a factory, but child also has a different category, like somebody who has attained the age of, or who has completed the age of 14 years is still a child till he completes the age of 15 years, but he is allowed to work in the factory. Child who is under the age of 14 years is not allowed to work in the factory. Now, when we are talking about the adolescent, that means somebody who has completed the age of 15 but has not completed the age of 18, right? So he's an adolescent. Can he work in the factory? The answer is yes, he can work in the factory, provided he obtains a certificate from certified surgeons. So he has to obtain a certificate that yes, I am medically fit to work in a factory. So you have to go to a certified surgeon. They'll examine you and provide you the certificate. So that is the duty of certified surgeon, to examine and certify the young persons, right? Moreover, you have other duties also. What other duties? You have to examine the person engaged in factories in dangerous process. See, anyone who is day and night exposed to some harmful gases that is being emitted in that is being inserted, or whatever it is, you're inhaling that particular gas which might be harmful for the health and body, right? So that particular persons or those workers should be examined every 3 months or every 6 months, that there are no side effects that are actually taking place. They should be provided adequate safety measures, medicines, whatever needed, right? So you're doing that. The third one is you are exercising medical supervision. In case of illness doesn't mean that you went out for a holiday, or some workers went to enjoy, or they went to a temple, or they went to some fete, and there they have had some ice creams and their throat got ill, right? So they have a sore throat, they got cold, right? So that illness is not to be examined by medical supervision over here by the certified surgeon. For that, you have ESI, right? So we read these things under that, right? Here, what we are discussing, if there is any illness which has come because of the work that you're doing, right? Or maybe there is an injury which might be suspected because the manufacturing process has changed, or you have started to use some new substance, or maybe there are young persons who are actually, it is not allowed to employ these young persons in some dangerous process, right? We have to take extra care of the young persons, but if at all they are employed in a work which might cause harm to their health, then there also you need to exercise medical supervision. Okay, clear? Fine. Then we come to the health measures. Health, which is covered in chapter 3 of the Act. So it talks about cleanliness, disposal of waste, ventilation, artificial humidification, overcrowding, lighting, dust, drinking water. So there are a lot of, and we'll read them section by section, right? What is it talking about? Health measures. Health measures means what? to take care of the health aspect of all the workers. So the very first one, section 11, cleanliness. Now every factory should be kept clean, free from effluvia. Effluvia is some kind of foul smell which comes because of the some substance or the dust, right? So it has to be free from all that terrible odor which might be coming, right? Any drain, any other nuisance, whatever it is, it has to be kept absolutely clean. Okay, so this is something which is given in general. Now we have something which is for which timelines have been given, that if there is dust on the floor, do you think it should be cleaned every day? Of course, ma'am. So there has to be no dust, no accumulated dirt on the floor, on the benches, on the staircase, on the passages, everywhere. So clean that dirt every day and dispose it off, right? Now, if we are talking about the floor, it has to be cleaned with disinfectant every week. So once in every week, you wash it with disinfectant, like we have Lysol or any other type of disinfectant that you might be using, right? Just to destroy the germs, because every day that might not be possible. Every day you must clean the floors, of course, but with disinfectant at least once in every week, right? Next, we have, there has to be drainage. That is something that you all know. Now, the interiors, the walls, the roofs, there has to be whitewash at least once in a period of 14 months. Okay. Then, if the surface has been painted or varnished, then it has to be repaired or re-varnished once in every 5 years. If it is washable, see, if it cannot be washed, then once in every 5 years you will repaint it, right? If it is washable, then once in every 6 months you will actually wash it. Wherever whitewash can be done, then of course, whitewash has to be done within a span of 14 months. Okay. Then, if there is smooth, impervious surface, then it has to be cleaned within every period of 14 months. And all the doors, windows, they have to be painted or they have to be varnished once in every 5 years. So, ma'am, do we need to remember all these dates? 100%, 200% you have to remember, because this is a very common question which is often asked in examination. So, you cannot compromise with it, right? The next section that we have, section 12. In fact, this was the question which this was the section which was actually the biggest one. Other health measures sections are very small. Section 12 talks about disposal of waste and effluents, right? So whatever waste is being generated by the factory, that has to be disposed of. So what measures have you taken for the disposal, right? So there has to be effective arrangement for the same. Next is section 13, which talks about ventilation and temperature. Now there are two things in this. Ventilation, every factory room has to be properly ventilated. Why properly ventilated? Because factories are one such place that they need ample of windows, ample of doors for some fresh air to be circulated. Otherwise there will be like a lot of suffocation. Secondly, when we talk about temperature, see, factory is a place where where manufacturing process is being carried out. So if manufacturing process is being carried out, like if I talk about cold storage, there is a very low temperature that needs to be maintained, right? There might be cases when you need very high temperature to be maintained, right? And the workers will need to go in there. So it is providing them a lot of discomfort, right? So if they have to work in excessively high or low temperatures, then you have to adequately insulate other parts, right? Or provide them a space, right? Separate their process, that okay, they're not having their lunch in that place only, otherwise lunchroom has to be there, but you have to separate their processes, like okay, they go in there for about half an hour and then they come out, they can rest over here, right? So that has to be done. The next one is section 14, which talks about dust. So there could be a lot of dust, because if you all know that let's supposedly we have some carpenter at our home and he's working. Now every time he cuts a particular wooden piece, there will be a lot of different type of dust which comes, and it's extremely harmful also, right? There are certain plies for which the dust is extreme, right? So this is somehow injurious because they are inhaling that only. So if there is dust, it should not be accumulated in the room, right? Because if it is accumulated in the room, there will be obvious inhalation, more inhalation. So if there is dust which is being generated, there should be adequate exhaust which is actually taking them out or cleaning, whatever has to be done. It depends upon the process to process. The next one is section 15. We have heard a lot about humidifier. What is humidifier? Air actually loses its moisture, and that's why even if when AC is switched on and there is no humidifier around, what happens, we start to feel a little choked. Why? Because it's all dry, there is no moisture in the air, right? So that has to be adjusted. So if the humidity of the air is increased, right, there are, state government has the power to in fact prescribe the standards of humidification, right, and what methods you should adopt to increase the humidity, right, and how you determine the quality. So you have to follow that. Next is section 16, which talks about overcrowding. Here, one question or one thing that you must remember is 14.2 cubic meters of space. This is often asked as MCQ, right? Or as an objective question. In every workroom in a factory, at least 14.2 cubic meter of space for every worker must be there, right? So you cannot do so that, like that, okay, I have this much space, let me employ 20 people to sit here. No, they cannot, right? So you have to have this adequate, this is the minimum space which must be provided per worker. Then we have section 17, which talks about lighting. Every part of the factory has to be properly lighted, right? There could be lights coming from the windows, right? And there shouldn't be any obstruction for the light, and that's it, right? There is one more thing when we talk about flashlights, right, or reflection. So it should not so happen that it's causing some eye strain or there is a risk of accident to any worker. Like if there is a window which when sunlight is being through that particular window, there is some kind of eye strain which is being generated. When we were very young or when we were very small as kids, we used to do this a lot, right? Supposedly we have any shiny surface, like if we have a mobile phone, we would actually like to do this, and there would be some light flashing or coming to your eye which is causing some kind of strain. No, don't do that, right? So this should not happen because there is very high risk for the workers to be prone to an accident also, because if suddenly they are doing something and this light comes, right, so their hand could be hurt, right? So this should be absolutely clean. There should be proper lighting. There could be glazed windows, right, and the light should be clean from obstruction. Plus, whatever shadow is being formed or a reflection is being generated, it has to be ensured that there shouldn't be an eye strain or risk of accident. Next is drinking water. Drinking water is what? Of course, you have to provide drinking water. Normal drinking water, yes, ma'am. Normal drinking water, it has to be at least 6 meters away from the washing place or urinals or spittoons, whatever is there, right? But there is one more thing. If there are more than 250 workers in a factory, then you also have to provide the facility of cool drinking water. So, during hot weather, of course, there is no one who during chilly winters they are going to demand for cool drinking water. No, but during hot weather you have to provide them. Then comes your latrines and urinals. Now this is something which is a basic necessity and has to be provided, right? What you have to ensure over here, that it has to be a separate facility for both your female and male workers. They have to be lighted properly, ventilated, clean, very important, right? So it is very important. There has to be proper sweepers who are going to be employed. And if the workers are more than 250, it has to be washed once in 7 days, right? Now, this particular cleaning, many students think that, okay, if there are less than 250 workers, then I don't have to keep it clean. No, the cleaning has to be done. Of course, every day there has to be cleaning. But here I'm talking if there are more than 250 workers, then it has to be cleaned with suitable disinfectants or detergents, whatever you call, at least once in 7 days, right? Then we have section 20, which is spittoons. Spittoons is something which is very much needed, right? In India, especially because mostly workers have this tendency of consuming tobacco in some form, right? So every factory should have sufficient number of spittoons at convenient places, and they should also be kept clean. Then we have safety measures. Now, we are not supposed to read the safety measures in detail. Okay, however, we'll just go through the safety measures. Chapter 4 provides us for the safety measures. The first one is fencing of machinery. So, there are a lot of machinery which are actually moving, which are in use in motion, and if you go near them, you could actually hurt yourself. So, there should be properly fenced, right? The next one is employment of young people on dangerous machines. Although we have a section number 23, which clearly says that young worker will not be allowed to work in any machine which is actually dangerous, right? And if at all they have to, they should have, or anyone who is appointed should have received sufficient training for the same. Then we have floors. Basically, if I say that, okay, there are different floors in a particular factory, there will be staircase, there will be passages, so they should be kept clean. And it should not happen that if I am walking, I am slipping, right? So it should be, that should be taken care of, right? Because somebody might slip on the stairs. They should be of good construction quality also, right? Strong. There has to be safety officers. Safety officers are not required in every type of factory. Safety officers are needed where 1000 or more workers are generally employed, right? The building has to be maintained. Wherever inspector feels that, oh, the building is in such a condition that it may demolish, right? It may fall down, right? Or it could lead to a condition where health of the workers is being compromised, right? So they will ask for repair, right? So safety of buildings or safety of machinery is also very important. The machinery should also be in a good working condition, right? If there are any defective parts, they have to be replaced, they have to be repaired. There should be proper precaution or measures which can be taken if there is an outbreak of fire, right? So because fire is something which spreads very quickly, so what are the safe means for escape? What do you have? Proper fire extinguishing equipments which should be installed in the factory or not, right? So that is also something which is needed. Then we have explosive or inflammable gas, right? So a lot of dust or fume may be generated. So what are the measures to prevent any explosion from them, right? How are they going to escape from that, right? You have to protect your eyes. Eyes protection is very important, so for that you can wear some suitable glasses or whatever. You have to consult the medical practitioner, of course. And if there is excessive light, then also you have a very high risk on your eyes, right? So you have to take care of that also. Then excessive weights should not be lifted by people, right? So state government can also prescribe rules that this is the maximum weight which may be lifted by men, by women, by adolescent, right, who are employed in the factories. Okay. And there should not be openings in the floors, right? Like there are pits on the ground, right? Because if somebody is carrying a lot of weight and walking in there, and there is a huge opening somewhere in the floor, he might fall down, he might hurt himself, right? So there are all these safety measures which needs to be taken care of. Fine. Okay. Then we have chapter 4a, which actually talks about the hazardous process. But before we go on to that, we have something called as site appraisal committee. What is site appraisal committee? Or let me get to this. Yeah, okay, no problem. We'll do this first. Let's go by the sequence only. Otherwise, you might be confused, right? So what is actually site appraisal committee? Again, central government has the power to constitute, state government has the power to constitute site appraisal committee, right? So what actually they do, if you want to open a particular factory, you have finalized this particular location, and this involves some hazardous process. That means if you put up a factory over there, it is going to emit out some gases which might not be good for the environment, or it is involving some hazardous process, right? So state government has the power to appoint a site appraisal committee, which will consist of the chief inspector of the state, of course, who is going to be the chairman, and there will be other people, right? Now what they will do is, whenever an application for establishment of factory which involves hazardous process comes, they will examine it. So site appraisal committee is going to examine the application for factory involving hazardous process. They can also call for more information, and they have to make recommendations to state government within a span of 90 days. Okay. And if the application is approved by central government, then you don't need any further approval from your central board. Okay, fine. Here I can basically write, if the application is approved by state government, that could be more appropriate. So if state government actually calls you approval, then you don't need to get approval from any state board, any central board, like we have under the Water Act, Prevention and Control of Pollution, right? Or we have the Air Act, because this is going to emit out or dispose of some gases in the environment, right? So we don't need that. We don't need any such further approval. Okay. Then duties of occupier, I've already told you in general what are the duties of occupier that we read over there. Occupier has to disclose info regarding danger and detailed policy of health and safety, draw emergency on-site disaster control plan, measures for handling or disposing hazardous process, right? So the occupier, this is not the duties of the occupier in general. The duties contained in section 41B actually talks of the occupier of any factory which involves hazardous process. So the disclosure is very much required, that what could be the probable health hazards and everything, right? So he has to lay down a detailed policy with respect to health and safety of the workers who are going to be employed. Fine. So there are more things in detail. Then when we come to 41C, here we talk about specific responsibility of the occupier when we are talking about hazardous substance. So what he has to do is, he has to maintain health records, up-to-date health records of every employee, every worker. Okay, because they're exposed to harmful substances or toxic chemicals or whatever it be, right? Then we have section 41D, where we talk that, okay, central government has been conferred the power to appoint an inquiry committee. So if there is an extraordinary situation which happens in such a factory which involves hazardous process, CG has the power to appoint an inquiry committee that go and inquire into the health and safety of this particular factory. Are they observing this or not? And if any failure or any negligence is discovered, then they are going to be adequately punished, right? Likewise, we have section 41E, and this is about power of central government to prescribe emergency standards. Okay, so if CG is satisfied that we don't have any standards prescribed for this particular hazardous process, right, or the standards that they exist, they are not sufficient enough, then it can actually go ahead and prescribe more. Fine. Now, section 41F, so the maximum threshold limit for exposure of toxic substances or exposure of chemicals that is being given over here, right? Then we have section 41G. Section 41G talks about occupier to set up a safety committee with equal workers and management to promote cooperation. Because if I am I am into management, right? I come every day to the factory, I look at the workers, but still I will not be able to know the ground and the real problems that they're actually facing. And in turn, even if I'm genuinely concerned and want to do for the betterment of the workers, still I'll not be able to do unless they also participate and they let me know the ground problems that they're facing, right? So it is very important to have that worker participation in the safety management. So there should be a safety committee which is going to be formed, in which there will be management and also the workers, and they'll try to cooperate with each other and promote safety at work. Okay, then we have section 41H, wherein workers notify occupier about likelihood of danger and immediate action has to be taken. Like supposedly there is a machinery which suddenly starts to make some crackling sound. Now this shows that there might be some accident, so they're foreseeing an accident and they immediately reported it to the their occupier, and the occupier has to immediately take action, shut down the machinery, report it to the inspector, and do that. Okay, fine. Then we have the welfare measures. Okay, I usually teach the welfare measures before, but since we had this way in the chart, so I have dealt it this way only. What are the welfare measures? We have section 42, which talks about the washing facilities. Washing facilities have to be kept clean, right? There should be suitable washing facilities for the workers, right? And for male and female, there should be separate washing facilities and it should be kept clean. That's it, right? Then we have section 43, which talks about storing and drying clothing. So if you have wet clothes, there should be proper place for drying them. There should be proper place for keeping the clothes which you're not wearing. So the workers usually, they come in their own clothes and then they change the dress of the factory. So where will they keep the clothes? Right, so there should be proper facility for storing and also the facility for drying clothes, because the uniform gets actually dirty. They have to clean it, they have to dry it, right? Then we have section 44, the facilities for sitting. The workers usually in the factories are working all day long in standing positions. So when they are not working, they should have suitable places for sitting also, because it affects the health of the workers. Then we have section 45, which talks about first aid, right? So at least one first aid box should be there for every 150 workers. So one box for every 150 workers, one thing, right? And it should have all the prescribed contents. It should be readily accessible and maintained at all times, right? Thereafter, if there are more than 500 workers employed in a factory, then there should be one ambulance room, and there should be an ambulance which should be available, and there should be nursing staff which is available at all times, because anytime some accident might happen. Okay. Section 46, which talks about canteens. If there are more than 250 workers, there has to be a facility of canteen which will be provided in the factory. And of course, there can be rules made for the canteens. The expenses of running is to be borne by the employer only. Okay. Then section 47, restrooms, shelters, and lunchrooms. There has to be proper in every factory. If there are more than 150 workers, there have to be adequate arrangements for restrooms and lunchroom. Okay, and if it is a lunchroom, then of course it has to have drinking water also, right? So you all can take their meals over there and they can enjoy the meal. They have the drinking water over there, right? And it has to be kept clean. It has to be lighted, it has to be ventilated. So all these general things are there. Then comes your section number 48. Section 48 is all about crèche. Now, this is basically needed for more women workers, of course, because although men can also carry their babies to work, but this is not the case, right? So if in a factory there are more than 30 women workers, then you have to provide them a room which can be used by them, and it is for the children under the age of 6 years, right? So if there are more than 30 women workers, then you have to provide a crèche for them so that they can come with their babies and they can be kept over there, right? They can be over there. It has to be properly lighted, ventilated, clean. There has to be an in charge, right? Then comes your section 49. Section 49 talks about welfare officers. If there are 500 or more workers, then occupier has to employ such number of welfare officers as may be prescribed. Okay, now state government has been given the power that you can go ahead and prescribe what are the duties of welfare officers and what are the qualifications of welfare officers and like things. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Fine. So we are done with the welfare measures. We are done with all section 41 that we have read. Now we come to chapter 6. Chapter 6 contains the working hours. Okay. So working hours of adult. First of all, we are talking adult working hours. Every adult is allowed to work only for 48 hours in any week. Okay. 48 hours in any week. He's supposed to get a weekly holiday also. Weekly holiday means the first day of the week shall be a holiday. Usually students have this misconception that the week starts from Monday. The answer is no. The first day of the week is Sunday. Okay, so the first day has to be the holiday. Holiday for the whole day in every week has to be there, and weekly holiday is usually the first day. If there is a factory which is open on Sunday and doesn't provide you a holiday on Sunday, in lieu of that it is going to provide you a holiday, a full day off on any 3 days immediately before or after. That means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or you can say Saturday, Friday, Thursday, whatever you may say. So on any other day apart from Sunday, right? So that is how it is going to be provided. Now there is one more thing. He's not supposed to work for more than 9 hours a day, including, or you can say 10.5 hours, including rest. No period of work is going to be more than of 5 hours, rest of at least 1 hour. That means at a stretch, you cannot go and work beyond a span of 5 hours. So these are all about duty hours of an adult. Holiday is something that I have already told you. But whenever you change the weekly holiday, it has to be notified to the workers and displayed. The notice has to be displayed in the factory. Fine? Okay. Just a second. Now, let's say there is a worker who actually worked for 48 hours and 10 minutes more, right, in a week. So, will it be violation? The answer is no, right? So, increase of 15 minutes or so should not be violative of this particular section as we're talking about, right? Now, when we come to holidays, is something that I have already told you, weekly holidays. How is it going to be working? And holiday means 24 consecutive hours beginning when your shift ends. It should not be that, okay, today your shift has ended at 3 p.m. and I say that, okay, now your today the rest of the day is holiday and tomorrow you have to come. No, it has to be, there has to be at least 24 hours, right, when your shift ends after that. Okay. Now we have something called as compensatory holidays. What are compensatory holidays? Supposedly there is a worker who has been called even on Sunday because there is a lot of workload, right? So he did not get any weekly holiday. Now he has to be allowed a comp off, that we say, right? So he has to get a compensatory holiday within 2 months immediately following that particular month, right? So supposedly he has let go of his 2 Sundays, so in the next 2 months he'll be getting a comp off. It could be any day that he wants to take, right? And he'll get that within next 2 months, right? In the same month also, or maybe within next 2 months also, he is allowed to do that. Okay, fine. Okay, now we have something called as overtime. I have already told you that the worker is allowed to work for maximum 9 hours in any day and for maximum 48 hours a week. This is something that we already know. Now supposedly he works for 12 hours in a particular day, right? Because that is the demand of the work, and in lieu of that he'll be allowed and he'll be getting that. But if he is working for more than 12 hours, this is the general shift that you can keep. But if he's working for beyond that particular period, he has to be entitled to overtime rate of wages. What is overtime rate of wages? Supposedly he gets 600 per hour. That's too much actually, or let's say 100 rupees per hour, right? That is what his basic wages is. So for the first 9 hours he'll be getting 100 per hour, but for the next 3 hours he'll be getting 200 per hour. So he will be entitled to overtime or wages at twice the rate. Fine. The adult worker, or when we talk about double employment, basically the adult worker is not entitled to work in two factories on the same day, right? Because there is a saturation of how much you can work, right? And of course for child worker, double employment is again prohibited. It attracts penalty. We have section 99, which we probably read at the end, and it clearly says that if there is a child worker who works in any factory, he works in another factory, right? So the parent or the guardian, whoever is actually going to be punishable with a fine. If the parent says that I don't know where my child was, he has been lost throughout, then of course if it was without the consent, then they'll not be penalized, but otherwise they will be penalized. Okay, fine. When we come to women employment, right, no woman is going to be allowed to work except between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., right? So this is the general tenure that we have for women, that this is the time which is authorized. Now state government may authorize employment of women between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., right? So that is depends if there is the state which is safe, the state government provides that assurance, plus the work is of such demand that no, they have to work during that tenure only, right? So accordingly it can be done. Fine. So we have section 66 where we talk about employment of women, which clearly says that you're not going to allow during that period. However, state government can authorize you, right? Fine. Then comes your um, advance payment is what? Supposedly you are taking a leave for 4 days, right? Now if you're taking a leave for 4 days, you are entitled to get the payment of those 4 days in advance if you're an adult. And if you are a child, then you have to take at least 5 days leave to get this advance payment. That means if I am an adult worker working in a factory and I'm applying for a leave of only 2 days, I will not be entitled to advance payment. Fine. However, if I am taking the leave for at least 4 days, then I will be allowed to take that advance payment also. Clear? I think it's very simple. Now, because I'm talking about leave, we have a lot to talk about leave. There is chapter 8, which actually talks entirely about annual leave, which is granted with the workers. Fine. Okay. Child worker, as I've already told you, if you are a child, then you're not allowed to work unless you complete 14 years of age. Now, once you've completed your 14th year of age, you're still a child, but you can work in the factory, right? Till the time you don't complete 15th year of age, you will be called as a child only, but you're working in the factory. And because you're a young person, you have to obtain that certificate of fitness. Once you complete your 15th year of age, then from that tenure till you complete your 18th year of age, you are called an adolescent and still a young person and still require the certificate of fitness. The certificate of fitness has a validity of only 12 months. Okay, so you have to get it renewed. You have to apply for it again. Okay, it has a validity of only 12 months. So if you are a young person, that means you are a child under the age of 14 years is prohibited to work in a factory, right? And other than that, if you're a child or an adolescent, then you or your guardian will make an application with all the documents, which is going to be signed by the manager in which you're proposed to be appointed, right? And it will be sent to the certifying agent. He will certifying surgeon. He will examine you, that are you fit enough to work or not, and thereafter grant you certificate, which is going to be valid for 12 months, and it may be revoked if you're no longer fit. Okay, fine, ma'am. Now, Because we are talking about child worker is not allowed to work for more than 4.5 hours in any day and during night. Female child is not allowed to work between 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the work is limited to two shifts, not spread over 5 years, 5 hours. Okay, 5 hours. The manager has to maintain a register. The register is not supposed to be maintained only for the child workers, but also for the adult workers. Child workers, you have to maintain a register wherein the name of the child, the nature of work, the group to which he is included, right? And the certificate of fitness, right? The number of certificate of fitness. Every certificate has a number, right? So that has to be maintained in the register. If I talk about the register of adult workers, then that also has to be maintained, and there also there will be name, the nature of work that they're being given, group or relay to which they belong, right, and other particulars. All this is going to be maintained in the register of workers. Okay, now we come to leave. Annual leave, right? Every worker who has worked for 240 days or more in a factory in a calendar year, so starting from January to December, if you check that, okay, this is the worker who has worked for 240 days or more, he is entitled to leave. Like, because wherever, no matter wherever in the corporates or in any company that you work, you are entitled to some leaves. You can get sick leave, right? There are a lot of leaves, right? So here also it is being given that you get a weekly off, that is different. You get the holidays which are off, right? Holi, Diwali, whatever it is there, that is different. Apart from that, you are entitled to annual leaves. Annual leaves like what? For every 20 days that you have worked, you'll get 1 day off leave, right? So supposedly you have worked for 40 days, so you are entitled to 2 days of leave. That's how it is being calculated. And for child, for every 15 days that you have worked, you get 1 day of leave. Okay, now when I'm computing this 240 days, I have to check that whether I have worked for 240 days in a factory or not. If the factory was not working, there was a day of layoff, it doesn't matter, I was not at mistake, so that will be counted in my 240 days, right? If I am a female worker and I am on maternity leave, then up to 12 weeks it was not going to be it is going to be counted in that 240 days, right? So these are all deemed working days, the leave which I have earned in my prior year. Supposedly in my prior year I earned a leave of 20 days, and this I have used in this particular year, right? So is it non-working day for me? No, it is going to be included in that 240 days for calculating this particular year, right? So if I don't take this leave, I can carry it forward to the succeeding year. Maximum 30 days in case of an adult and maximum 40 days in case of child, that can be carried forward, right? How do we apply for taking leaves? We have to apply to the manager to avail leave, and we have to apply at least 15 days before. If we are working in a factory which involves public utility service, that does not have to stop. So in that case, we have to apply at least 30 days before. Fine. So we will make an application and they will actually grant us leave, and we are also entitled to advance payment if we take at least 4 or 5 days leave, whatever the case be. Okay. Then we have something called as encashment of leave. Okay. So first thing was what leave we'll get. The second thing is carry forward of leave. So that also we have done. The third one is availing of leave. How do you avail the leave? So you have to make an application to manager at least 15 days before, right? Then you have advance payment. That is also something that I've already told you. Then you have encashment of leave. What is encashment of leave? Supposedly the worker is dismissed. Okay, now no more you're required. He's discharged or dismissed, or he leaves or he dies, whatever it be, right? So he will get amount in lieu of his leave, right? So immediately before termination, if you are entitled to 30 days of leave, then you can encash this leave. Okay, you can encash this leave and you will get it. The payment is going to be made before expiry of second working day of discharge, or in case of death within 2 months from superannuation or death, whatever the case be. Okay, fine. Now this what is the wage that you'll be getting? Supposedly you're taking leave, but what is the wage that you'll be getting? Whatever you were earning full time, the same you'll be getting during leave also. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Apart from that, we have penalty, enhanced penalty, that is supposed to be revised by you all, right? So penalties you are going to revise on your own. Now we have certain definitions that we didn't do, so we will go back to the definitions, right? And we will quickly revise them. Yes, here we are to the definitions part. Right, there are few definitions that I already told you, but there are few important definitions. In the charts we have covered the important definitions only, so these important definitions will be discussing. The very first one is competent person. What is competent person? Who is a competent person? Competent person is again somebody who is recognized by the chief inspector. Now, he may be an individual, he may be an institution also. How do you recognize a competent person? There are a lot of things that are needed in case of a factory. Supposedly there is a factory, we need to check, is the building appropriate or not? Is it going to demolish? Are the conditions okay? So we need to have a lot of competent persons who can actually do or carry out inspection. Fine. So chief inspector has the duty to do that. Chief inspector appoint or recognize a lot of people as competent person for carrying out inspection in the factory. Right. Now, they will see that if I am appointing this particular institution as a competent person, do they have the qualification, experience as I need, and do they have the facility to carry out this particular inspection? If yes, well, they will appoint. Okay, so we check, or the chief inspector actually checks the qualification, experience, and facilities that are available, and based on that, having regard to that, they actually recognize or appoint certain person as the competent persons. Okay, clear? Fine. Next we have is the hazardous process. Hazardous process is what? Any process which is specified in first schedule. Any process which is specified in first schedule. Now here you have to take extras or special care, because it may cause some health impairment, or it may result in polluting the environment. That is the two things that you have to understand. Okay, so hazardous process is any process or activity which is specified in first schedule, wherein the raw material or the intermediate goods or the finished goods or any waste which is being generated, any effluents which are being generated, it would cause impairment to health or pollution of general environment, and that is why we need to take special care. So unless special care is taken, this would happen, but we don't want this to happen. That is why we take special care. So what is hazardous process? Any process which is specified in first schedule, which unless special care is taken would result in this. Okay, manufacturing process is something that I have already told you. Then we have worker. Who is called as a worker? A person who is employed. He may be employed directly, or usually we have contractors that, okay, we want 10 workers, so that particular contractor will give us 10 workers, right? So worker is somebody who may be employed directly, or who may be employed through some agency or contractor. Okay, now he is being employed with or without principal employer's knowledge, it doesn't matter, right? Whether for remuneration or not, it doesn't matter. In the manufacturing process or cleaning or machinery premises, so anyone who is cleaning the machinery is also a worker, or any incidental work. See, one is the direct work and one is the incidental work. Unless you clean the machinery, unless you oil the machinery, unless you set up this, the machinery cannot work. So those are incidental works only which are being happening, right? So first thing is you have to be employed. Any unemployed person is not going. That means there has to be a contract of employment between the two of you, right? Now this contract of employment could be direct one, or also through some agency or contractor. It doesn't matter. It should be direct or through some agency. It doesn't matter. You should be employed in the manufacturing process only, or maybe some incidental work or cleaning of machinery. That is the The third aspect which you have to understand. The fourth aspect, it may be for remuneration or may not be for remuneration, right? So if you're receiving wages as remuneration, then great. Or if you are employed for no wages, then also you are a worker, you are entitled to these health, safety, welfare measures. All these are needed. Okay. Now, one thing that you have to remember is any member of the armed forces of the union is excluded from the definition of worker. This is something that you have to specially remember. The definition of factory is something that I've already told you, and now we have the definition of occupier. Occupier is somebody who has the ultimate controls of the factory. So if the factory is owned by a firm, then any individual partner, like if there is a factory which is owned by a company, in company we have a lot of the directors, right? Board of directors. Now, any of the director may be entrusted or delegated the authority to control this particular factory. So that particular director becomes the occupier. So if it is a firm, any of the individual partners; if it is a company, any of the directors; if the factory belongs to central government or state government or local authority, then whatever person is appointed by that central government, state government or local authority, right? If a ship in which repair is being carried out, so there is a dock, right? And there will be a ship. You understand what a dock is, right? Now, here some repair or maintenance work is being carried out. So that particular area also become a factory in a way. So who is the occupier? Who has the ultimate control over that particular area? So there are two things, right? There will be an owner of dock. So for certain sections and certain purposes, we consider owner of dock to be the occupier, and in certain cases, we consider owner of ship to be the occupier for workers employed by him and the premises or the plant and machinery. So they are going to be deemed to be the occupier. I've explained you in detail in the class. I don't think here it is needed. So that is how you will remember the definition of occupier. So we have covered basically all the important definitions that are needed, and you have to learn the definitions also, though not word by word, but you should be able to write in your own words, because the definitions are also asked in examination, and you must actually know them, right? So hope you have understood the entire chapter of Factories Act, whatever is incorporated in your syllabus, and you're able to recall it well. Thank you.